Hello, everyone. My name is Fabrice, and I'm with Syllable, and I want to talk to you today about Westworld, especially season three. Westworld is an extremely fascinating science fiction thriller that goes into the ethical, philosophical notions of machines and artificial intelligence, and why and the reasons behind what if an artificial intelligence were to gain a level of sentiency, and would they rebel against society? Would they seek to topple it down? And is essentially there's going to be a lot of spoiler alerts, and I'm sorry about that, but the season three, it's the first time that we see how the human world exists and how it has evolved. And one of the main characters that we see is Aaron Paul, and a lot of the way his sort of character arc is the former military. He's done a lot of black ops types of activities that really causes him a lot of trauma. But essentially, it's I think it might even predate. I don't know who wrote Minority Report. I don't know if that was Michael Cranston as well. But Michael Cranston wrote Westworld, the novel, and that's what the entire show is based on. And for season three, they explore this one of the robots, one of the artificial intelligence, Dolores, who happens to be the first one that was created in this park. It's sort of the same mindset too. I think it's the same thing Michael Cranston did with Jurassic Park, where what if there was an entertainment capitalist space where people would pay money to go and experience something. And you see the same thing with Jurassic Park, where people did the same thing, the genetic modifying process. But now, what if there was the outside world that would pay money to go into a park that was all like fueled by artificial intelligence, of like they designed these robots to look like humans, and these robots essentially don't have emotions or feelings. At least that's what we initially believed in the earlier seasons. But what we come to find out, that these very robots, that anything can happen to them by the outside world, and these by high payer stakes. So the tickets to go into that, to the West world, is almost like really expensive. So you get a specific crop of people, and there's these shareholders that want to ensure that there's no incidents, and that they want to make sure that the park has new storylines, new plots. It is an interesting, fascinating concept. So fast forward to season three, one of the robots now escapes because we come to find out that they are sentient and they have emotions and they have feelings. And they start to realize that the park and the West world and the creator is mirrored on top of different levels of mysteries. And one of these robots wants to bring the human world to complete destruction. And I think that the story is interesting because you start to really care, or even actually root for the robot. You actually want the human world to be destroyed, because you start to see how humanity, I don't want to say how humanity, but yes, essentially humans, and our emotions and our mindsets and our dogmas have sort of treated these robots that are so human, but they don't see that humanity. So there's a lot of social commentary into that. So essentially, Dolores goes finally to the human world, and she tries to fit in. She goes, and pretty much, I think one of the most fascinating things that was a reveal when she, you see all these different characters that has have appeared in different seasons, at least some of them, but all of them are Dolores's consciousness that she like mirrored and recreated in her own image through these other robots that are integrating themselves in these lives. And their entire goal is to have access to the mainframe. Like it's almost as if it's another artificial intelligence. I forgot how they call it, but this artificial intelligence is able to gather data, pretty much anything and everything that someone has ever done in their entire life. This robot is able to predict where it's, what you're gonna be, what problems is gonna happen, like how it's gonna happen, who you're going to become in 10, 20 years, whether it's medical, psychological, social, economic, cultural, political, all of the above. It's just mass data which we hear in society today. We hear this. I can't believe this novel was written in the 70s, and you see so much of this same conversation almost 50 years later when we're talking about big data, we're talking about predictive analytics, we're talking about Yuri Yuval, who talks about like how these big companies that are harnessing our data know more than we know ourselves. And essentially that's what the context is. And Dolores as an AI is almost as if she's like, she wants humanity to be able to know, and she wants humanity to be able to choose where they're going to go. And eventually she succeeds with the help of this former military guy that she specifically, I think a lot of it is so targeted. She's so like three or four or five or six steps ahead of herself and in the way. But I think it starts getting really interesting because not all of the robots, or I don't want to call them robots, but these artificial intelligence beings are want the same thing. Others believe humans can change. Others don't necessarily believe that the world should die. But it almost seems as if it's like out of all the humans, it almost seems that 99% of all the humans don't necessarily believe that they can live in the same world as robots, but except that former military guy, Aaron Paul. Um, and I think the fork meets the road when, or the road meets the, or the rubber meets the road when the robot starts to have different types of identities and the different types of ways. And Dolores is how she split her consciousness into these different characters in that society start to have their own identity now, and they start to want different things. And eventually the way that it ends, there's a lot of revelations in terms of the journey of the Aaron Paul's character on how he was like a black ops and hired by the company to essentially like kill off people and go into these wars. But all of this was also at the hands of this like massive AI that's controlling all the big data. And I think towards the end of the season, they sort of showed like this is a new world. Like the new world is starting, where chaos is the rule, and that everyone now has the knowledge of what their own process. So just imagine one day waking up and then realizing your deepest and darkest secrets that you've known your entire life are revealed, or even in terms of medical, or even in terms of personality, it's just revealed out to the entire world for everyone to see of like, wow, this person is a murderer, or this person is a liar or a cheater, or this person is unethical. And yes, I guess it tends to look at a lot of the negatives. Like for example, for the Aaron Paul's character, it showed him that he would die in like 10 years time, like where he would kill himself because of the trauma and he's not connected to people. He would fall off into this specific spot. So that's how intense like that predictive analytics would look like. So I think in terms of season four, what I look forward to is almost what becomes of humanity when they have this knowledge, and what becomes of the world where order was seemingly being designed by this super AI that had all the massive amount of data, and what becomes of the other robots. I think a big part of this as well is that it starts to humanize and also dehumanize us, deconstruct what it means to be human, deconstruct what it means to have consciousness. Because I think as humans, we always like feel that we're special, that we're intelligent, that we know, and that we're immune to being wrong, and that we don't necessarily believe ourselves to be the oppressor or the enemy. And I think this show is such a powerful commentary on the human imagination and consciousness, that a lot of what defines us as human beings is our imperfections, our impulsiveness, our rawness. And I think it's expressed pretty beautifully by the artificial intelligence in the show that starts to have these kind of grandiose existential commentary on humanity. Yeah, I think Westworld is such a lovely show. I think it was kind of slow in the first part of the season, of the third season, but I do feel like it definitely picked up. And it definitely had there's a lot of actions. It definitely had a lot of suspense, a lot of subplots. There's so much going on. I also love this billionaire that is behind the scene that bought up the entire corporation, Dallas, that has created the park, and essentially the entire. You come to find out that the entire vision of that billionaire that doesn't show his face, this French guy, Chirac, he is pretty much has this chip behind his ears, and the massive like brain AI that's like bigger, the large one that's harvesting this data, is the one that's been telling him to say everything that he's ever said. And I found it a little bit shocking because when he's disconnected from that large AI, he doesn't know what to say, he doesn't know what to do, which eventually makes it even more of a commentary on just like how dependent we are from or analytics or data or technological process and what would happen when all of that falls away. And I think that's what season 4 is going to explore. Season 4 is going to look into the chaos of our world with that central command that was there all the time. Yeah, I think Westworld is beautifully done. I think the acting is pretty solid. I think the conversations and the ideas that are espoused in the show are pretty compelling, I would say. And the world is pretty immersive. I think what I would have loved to see more is that I I would have loved to see more of the complexities between the robots, the artificial intelligence. I would have loved to see more because I think they just slowly, briefly made that engagement when Dolores was sort of talking to this massive, like it's like this massive AI is just this massive giant ball. It's like I don't know, it's like maybe 2 story tall that harvests the data, and he connected or it connected with Dolores, and they were talking together, and they were like, "Oh, I'm not like you. You're a product of this park." And then this person's like, and Dolores is like, "No, we are more alike." I think where the show fails, I feel like it could have explored more deeply the complexity between the interactions of the different layers of AI. I think it does that well, but it very much anthropomorphizes the relationships of the AI. Like when the different artificial robots like Dolores and the friend, I forget the name, should have written down, but they sort of differ differently because the other woman, she's looking for her child and she wants that space where a lot at the end of season 2 they left to. Um, so I think that's where the show fails for me. I think there's so much incredible potential to look at the conflict between the AIs as opposed to looking at it from a human lens. But it does explore it, but it does. I think it did barely scratch the surface. I think they definitely focused on the human story, and I can understand you're looking to a human audience, so you can't really go beyond that. But I think that's the brunt of the sci-fi because it's like it's been there, done that. The idea of a robot that is wanting to burn the human world to the ground, whether it's in the Matrix or Terminator. You've seen it. You always see that sort of trope. But I think the beauty in Westworld was that it set it up so well. But I think there's another layer of complexity. Like if the AI do have sentiency, what does it look like to have a level of conflict within the AI outside of like, oh yeah, can we burn the human world down or we should not burn the human world down? I think that is an interesting conversation, but I think there is so much more that could have happened. Um, but yeah, I definitely recommend it. It's pretty epic season. I can't wait to see what happens next. So yeah, this is it. Make sure to like below this video and also follow Syllable channel. I'll be posting more comments, more ratings, comparisons, thoughts around some of the current sci-fi and fantasy stuff that's happening. And yeah, make sure to share the video if you like this. And until next time, Fabrice here, and thank you. Peace.